Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of Help! I'm trying to DM, and I don't know what to do, and I'm also broke. It's kind of a long title, work in progress. We'll move on. So, last part, we got all set up pretty like. The only differences between the last part and this part is I went ahead and took the time to type out my information of the game. And yours, of course, will look different because it's your own game and not my game. But this is a basic kind of idea for a game that I have had, and again, I will be running it, so it is a real thing. It's just not ready just yet. And now we're going to have the fun part of launching the game. Woohoo! Click the button. And then take an hour to load. I can't help that. Don't allow, please. Okay, so that is something that you're going to have to deal with as a free player. Yes, ads are annoying. No one likes them. They're very irritating and often poorly placed. That being said, though, it's a small gripe to pay for not paying for gripes. Man, I'm good. So this is the first thing you're going to see when you start up a D&D game as the DM for the very first time on Roll20. Nice. It again can appear very overwhelming. Don't let it. You're better than that. No big deal. First thing you're going to want to do is, you may have noticed that during the ad, it popped up, hey, do you want to use your microphone or camera with Roll20? No. Now, this is kind of a shifting point for a lot of people. Roll20 has built-in tools for audio and video purposes if you want them. They're not the worst thing on the planet. Are they the best thing on the planet? Absolutely not. But they are not the worst thing on the planet. So if you want to use them, you're more than welcome to. For these purposes, definitely not. I use Discord as my audio source because it's the best, and you should too, really. That being said, though, once I've blocked it off, we have access to our first screen. Now, there's a lot of information here, and we're going to break it down nice and simple for you. What's important, what's not, what I can use now. Before we begin, I always recommend people to do something very important, especially the DM. Although, again, they're pronounced GM here, but it's the same thing. Is to make sure you go into your settings, which is the top right corner, sprocket, easy, simple. This is where you can change a lot of the information. Go ahead and drop down that master music level. If you're using music, it'll help. If you're not using music, it'll help. And we're going to immediately scroll down and down and down and down to the chat avatars. The chat avatars is just below deck size, it's just below token colors. Can I change? Oh, I can change this. I never knew that. That's cool. Just below chat avatars, you're going to see player video avatar size as regular. This is personal preference. What this is controlling is in the bottom left corner. You're going to see my icon. It's a generic one for Roll20. And I personally prefer to get rid of that because it blocks up some space for map purposes. And that doesn't help anybody. So I always change it to names only. My name here is blank, unfortunately, because of the free account. It helps keep it straight in my location. That's not a bottom problem either. Just below that, you're going to see player video and avatar location. I always keep it at the bottom. It's never bothered me down there. If you're wanting it on top, you're more than welcome to. I don't know why you would. And then you can, of course, change where they appear on the screen by dragging it around. It's really riveting. That being said, not important to what we're going for. Also, if we scroll down a little bit more, you'll notice that you'll see some chat tech which is here. What I recommend is going ahead and doing none. Again, this is a personal preference. If you're looking to use the Roll20 integration for voice and video, that's fine, but I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off for my purposes. And it's going to refresh that, and I forgot about that. It will refresh your Roll20 page, so no big deal. We're going to go back into our settings and notice that all of the information is now gone because we're not going to use it. Below this previously was a lot of little tweaks for video and voice, what cameras you want to use, what microphones you want to use, audio setup, etc., etc. If you're using that, good luck to you. This is not the tutorial for you. I am not going to be using those, therefore I'm going to ignore them and move on with my life. That being said, that's basically all we're going to need to change in the settings, and I'll tell you why. You may notice that my mouse is hovering over Enable 3D Dice and automatically roll 3D dice. That's sweet, but it clogs down the system a lot, especially if you're running on a potato rig. I'm not saying my rig's potato, but I could see it as french fries or vodka. So I wouldn't bother, personally. Again, it's something nice and sweet that you can do and have fun with once you start rolling dice on the tables, but it's not important by any stretch. So I just go ahead and leave that blank. I am going to go ahead and change my display name just for variation. Hey, look, it's me. Hey, look, there I am. So, that being said, there is one final tool in here that is kind of necessary. And we can change a lot of different information, as you are going to hear me say a lot. But you'll notice at the top right corner, you see Rejoin as Player. And the reason that they put this in is you're able to see what the players can see when you're testing things. You can do it in-game too if you're trying to be an NPC or something like that. I don't know why you would, but you can. But it's really helpful for testing maps and lighting rigs, which we'll get into much later. It's a little goofy, I'll be honest. That being said, that's pretty much the end of our settings section. Onwards and upwards, I always say. The chat is the first screen that you're going to see. That's, I would hope, self-explanatory. This is where you can chat to your players. This is where you can type in things. This is where you're going to see characters roll, which we'll cover in a little bit. And that's helpful as well. It does, every time you log in, you don't have to write all this down. You're going to see this greenish screen as a, hey, here's a couple of things that you can do. And that's nice. Not required, but nice. Lastly, you're going to notice at the very top of this game, you see player link for this campaign is a bunch of numbers and words. Not important to me at the moment in time, but that is something that you can use once you're ready to invite players to the game. Again, not super useful, especially the way that you should be doing it is inviting players on the front page. So, now that we're finished with that, we're not going to go through all of these tools just yet. That's another video. And we're not going to go through all of these tools. That's another video. I am going to go ahead and give you some basics, though. First step in the grand scheme of all things is change your color. Bottom left corner, you see the little icon where it has a color. Change that stuff. It's your color. It's your preference. It's your identity. Make it yours. I always choose purple because I'm awesome. Purple's awesome. Fight me. Don't fight me. I'll win. That being said, in the top right corner, you're going to notice a scroll bar. God, I hope that's self-explanatory. It lets you zoom in on the maps or zoom out of the maps. I am a 50%er kind of person. It lets me see everything with a little bit of wiggle room I can work around. Your screen size is going to make a difference here. I have a wider-ish screen of 20 in 1-2 inches. I forgot. I don't even remember. I need a new one too, which is really sad. But it is going to affect how the zoom in features work. I have 2 other monitors nearby. They're odd shapes. They will adjust accordingly. It's not perfect. The smaller the screen, the worse and kind of squished it looks. I can't help that. The larger the screen, of course, you're going to have a lot more area to play with. Common tool tip. Red flag this moment. If you're playing in a game or running a game and you're streaming it, you want a, like I do, second account so that you can view as player for the stream so that they're not seeing all the DM tools behind the screen to spoiler out. That does happen, unfortunately. A very, very useful tip is when you are streaming and you're recording the screen here, much like I'm doing and filing at, F11, at least on the standard Windows computer, is a godsend. It allows you to just kind of focus exactly what you want to look at. Again, I zoom in a little bit more when I do that. 60% allows for full screen. This is what players see. This is what the stream can see. It's a wonderful tool that I recommend highly. That being said, of course, it doesn't really do us a lot of good. Now, moving on, in this tutorial here, I'm going to go ahead and just cover map creation. It's going to be a little bit harder to cover it fully, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples really quickly. Top right corner is a blue tab. It says the page toolbar if you hover over it. Love it when they label things. It clears up so much information for us. If we drop that down, we're going to see a, well, relatively gray system. This gray system is to keep all of your maps in line. It helps so much to know where the players are going, and you can adjust the maps accordingly. So we're going to go ahead and do that as an example. We're going to create a new page. Hey, look, a new page. And we can adjust these and slide these over if we need them. That will be vital if you fill up this. Try and keep your map creation under control. I have a bad habit about it, as much as the next person, but try. It helps because you don't want to scroll through all of these. And when you're swapping players over, which, by the way, is this red flag here, it kind of looks like a bookmark. You can drag that over, and then the players are on this map, even though the GM, or the DM, is on this one, because you can tell by the highlight there. It helps to work in the background a little bit. That being said, let's go ahead and play with a little bit of adjustment. So this map that we're working on is fine to adjust because it's already here and it works great. First step is, of course, naming it. If you click on the words down below it, it's usually untitled. Of course, star to start. World is not a bad way to start your thing because you always want to know exactly what the world looks like. You don't always want to know, but it helps. If you hover over the map, you're going to see duplicate page, which just means a carbon copy of it, which you can adjust in the background. Not my thing, but it is a useful tool that is free, and that's the name of the game. The second, of course, is your blue tab here, the page settings. If we click on that, we can see a couple of different tools, and it's going to start looking very similar to the first video, where you can adjust these forever. Because we didn't do that, we have to adjust them manually every time we make a new page. The width and height are self-explanatory. They're how you adjust the map accordingly. If you're using a more horizontal build or a wider map, you can adjust them here. I prefer exactly the way it's set up because it's comfortable and I don't have to think about it. The background is something that you can change as well. I don't know why you would. I've never had to do that, to be brutally honest with you. But you can. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? This is an important step here. Page scale. On your page, you're going to notice that there are a ton of little boxes. In D&D, you're going to be very familiar with the idea that characters can move X amount of feet, or X amount of feet is covered by spells or abilities or weapons. Make sure you want to keep the 5-foot grid. It's the best setup for when you're starting D&D or DMing or dancing. Yeah, that works. If you start adjusting these, which they can do manually, hey, that's a good idea for a Corona build. Oh, hilarious. You want to make sure that you keep this the same because players expect to be able to count, and we'll get into tools how to count later, where they're going, how far they can go, how covered things are. You can also change it into different sizes. These are mostly for humor aspects as far as I'm concerned. If you play in a weird game where it's like the whale, like Noah, where you get eaten. It's like Pinocchio. You Pinocchio with Monstro. You can run around in centimeters and inches inside of it, and that's humorous. Not exactly the requirement. Feet, as an American, is what we normally use and is the way the books are usually written. That being said, keep it there. Of course, you can change the grid, which is all these little squares here, if you're going for a more cinematic approach. Cinematic approach is nice, but not required. Also, as a note here, and I'll be covering this again in another video, if you turn off the grid now, you actually can use some other map tools to make a grid with the map creation. And if it's not perfectly aligned, which it never is, then having the ability to turn off the grid and using the grid on that side of the world is nice for visual aesthetic. However, there's a catch. Of course there is. If you turn off the grid here, your characters are just going to kind of move around willy-nilly. With the grid enabled, they're locked to these squares, and the tokens and the characters snap to those grids. And it's very, very helpful. So I would recommend keeping it on unless you're ready to accept the responsibility of willy-nilly characters. Oh no. That being said, even more tools are down below. You can change the squares out for hexes. That's better suited for other game types. Not here. We're going to ignore that. Go ahead and keep your measurements the same. Again, different rule sets are fine. Not here. Again, cell width. I'm a repeating book today. Books don't repeat. Man, I'm clever. The cell width is the same scenario. You want to go ahead and keep your pixels the same because that's the way that it's understood. That's the way that it works the best. The color is for your grid lines. You can change those if you want to be really fancy. I always keep them gray because, I don't know, I'm boring that way. And the opacity is, of course, how thick and well seen that they are. Again, not something I ever really manage or meddle with. Not super important. Moving on. Fog of War is a entire video of itself. In short, if you turn it on, of course, nothing bad will really happen. But it blacks out the page so the players can't see. And then when their tokens are out, if you have everything set up right, and what a nightmare that's going to be, then they can visually see little snippets here and there of what their tokens or what their actual characters would be able to see. It's an extremely nice touch. It makes everything look really polished and professional. It's also a nightmare. It's just a giant headache trying to set up sometimes. So, but it is worth it. Every player, when it does work, is super drawn into the scenarios when the Fog of War is enabled. Restrict movement, of course, is kind of the same things. This will be helpful for when you're setting up dynamic lighting and Fog of Wars and buildings. I don't use it personally because I'm lazy. If your character is in a hallway and they have to wrap around a corner with the restrict movement on, they would actually have to go down and up and around. Without it on, they can just drag their token across the wall because that's where you're going to end up anyway. What's the big deal? Personally, I keep it off, but I will go ahead and cover that in a later video of exactly what that does. Last but certainly not least is play on load. Play on load is when that map shows up for the first time to a new player. A tune we'll start to play. It's nice. It's a great aesthetic. Again, I don't use it, but it's mostly because when I stream D&D games, there's so much licensed music out there that it gets slapped all the time. I just had to fight YouTube on a licensed copy music, which is dumb, but that's how video games work. Curse me for playing video games. Anyway, that is your basic standard page settings in a nutshell, except for the couple things that I'll be covering in later videos. So if we click on OK, then you'll automatically have all of the settings changed. Just for an example, I'm going to go ahead and turn on Fog of War, and you can see that it's all kind of grayed out. This is not what the player sees. They see black void and maybe eyes that stare out at you, but no promises. This just helps the DM kind of move all the tokens in the background that the players may or may not be able to see. Again, we'll cover this in a later video. It was just to show you how things change. So that is your basic overview for your first page setups and what to see when you're starting your D&D game. So that's it for this video. You, of course, can follow me on YouTube, which is where I'm recording this, and are able to see more helpful-ish videos when you're starting D&D for the first time as a DM. And I'll be showing you more tools and tricks later down the road. So thank you so much.